Alright guys, in today's video I'm going to do something very different than what I usually do. Bear with me here. I'm going to go over a meta-analysis of the game currently, and probably going to show some deck lists at the end of this video just so you know what to look for, what to try and build towards. There's some very interesting things I've noticed on these couple of charts slash graphs I'm going to show you guys. So I guess I'll just hop right into it. So this is a matchup chart. Some of the decks on here, I mean, it goes really, really wide, almost unnecessarily. I mean, like, Wigglytuff, Weezing is on here, I mean, it's like, how often do you see that deck? But anyway, Mewtwo Gardevoir. Okay, so this is a really interesting matchup spread to talk about. So if you notice, there's a lot of matchups that are very close to even or slightly worse than even for Mewtwo. Okay, so I think a lot of that has to do with user error. And I do mean a lot of it, because there's a lot of people that think Mewtwo is just a very underwhelming, like a deck that's not hard to play. I think it's kind of like brain dead, like the helmet deck of the format, and it's just not. Whenever things aren't going your way, I think it's actually the most difficult deck to play. I haven't played a deck that's more difficult than it to play 100% correctly. And so I think a lot of these matchups that are almost even or slightly unfavored should actually be a lot higher than what they are. But with that being said, so mirror match 50%, Pikachu and Zapdos EX 47%. See, now when people on my channel, they ask me how do you beat Mewtwo, I always tell them that you have to get out in the front quickly and deal that 90 damage, preferably with a Starmie or a Pikachu. And I'm actually kind of glad I've been giving that advice, because looking at the numbers, every single deck that runs Starmie has a higher than 50% win rate against Mewtwo, and I think that's because of the Starmie, not because of the Articuno, not because of whatever else they're running. It's because of the Starmie. It's the only thing that can get in there quickly enough. But I do think that 47%, I think that number could be bumped up a little bit if the Mewtwo players were a little bit better. And, Pikachu and Zapdos, they don't have so many of these nuances. Like, if you start with a full bench and a Pikachu and you just go energy 90, that's all you need. It's a lot easier to get Pikachu set up than it is to navigate a bad draw with Mewtwo. So I think that matchup's probably not quite as bad as it says here, but it's probably not too far off. I mean, we're not only talking about 5 to 10 percentage points here. Pikachu and Electrode, 47%. That also doesn't make sense to me. And also, I'm not exactly sure what the delineations are, because, like, for instance, my deck was like 2 Pikachu EXs, 2 Zapdoses, and 2 Electrodes, and these are like separated here. But they do have a separate category for Pikachu Raichu. So again, it's also 47%. So a lot of the same things that I just said are going to apply. Now, Pikachu Zebstrika has a winning matchup against that deck, and I can actually see that. That's one of the reasons I moved off of the Zebras. I just didn't think it was that good against Mewtwo. Trying to snipe Mewtwo on the bench, or anything on the bench of Mewtwo for that matter, never really seemed that strong. The deck always runs double potion. The Pokemon have so much HP already, so I can totally see that. Charizard and Moltres has a losing matchup. I can see that. Honestly, I played Charizard a good bit, and I generally have a good time against Mewtwo. If they stumble at all, and you can set up the double Crimson Storm, it's really bad for them. You can also just get a knockout on a basic Pokemon they have in the front, and then you can just hang out with the Charizard in the back, and then when they finally go in with the Mewtwo, they just lose. And so you play Moltres Beats at first, and then they lose. That makes sense to me. Articuno Starmie X, this makes perfect sense that this is a losing matchup. I can 100% see it. If they start with Starmie, you've got some problems. If they get a good Misty Flip, you've got problems. Do I think it's as bad as it says here? Like, again, I think there's some user error, but still, I don't think it's favored. Pikachu Raichu loses to it 49%. I actually think Pikachu Raichu might be the best deck in the game. I think Pikachu Raichu has a way better matchup than that. I think it's the only Pikachu matchup that actually might have a very favorable matchup against Mewtwo. I mean, I think every Pikachu deck does, but I think Pikachu Raichu is the best. That's the one I would want to bring in if I was playing against Mewtwo. Arbok Weezing, obviously, Mewtwo gets wrecked by it. That's the reason the entire deck exists as an archetype. What can you say? And if you look at the matchup chart, I'll just go ahead and cover it right now. Where's Arbok Weezing? Yeah, it literally has one winning matchup, and that's against Mewtwo. So you can play it if you want to pick on Mewtwo, but if you want to lose to everything else, you know, that's, you know, go for that, I guess, if you want to do that. Marowak and Sandslash has a favorable matchup. There's no surprise there. Winning matchup against Venusaur, no surprise there. Executor Venusaur specifically. So basically all I'm saying is these matchups that look really close to 50% with Mewtwo, I think that they easily could be even. I think these Mewtwo players just aren't quite as good at operating the deck, but also, you know, you start with that Pikachu, you're going to give Mewtwo some problems. So, I mean, the more I look at it, the more I can see it. I really wish Mewtwo was just a little bit better represented. But I mean, a lot of these results are from tournaments where the players are good. It's just on ladder, people mess up with Mewtwo a lot. So I don't exactly know how much of these statistics are based off of just tournaments or just recorded games. And also, just because you compete in a tournament doesn't mean that you're good. These Mewtwo players could just be getting knocked out quickly. Okay, now we're going to move into Pikachu and Zapdos. So there's 1, 2, 3 losing matchups, which are Pikachu Zebstrika, which makes sense because you can snipe their Zapdoses on the bench. Loses to a Pikachu Raichu. Again, I think the Pikachu Raichu variant is just crazy good. Let's see. We're losing to Marowak and Sandslash. They have weakness. You know, Pikachu has weakness, so that makes perfect sense. Everything else, totally fine with. Articuno Starmie, obviously, you're very favorable against. Pikachu Electrode. Now, this deck goes down in power level a bit, it looks like. I mean, it's really, really close, actually. Because the underlining factor is the two energy 90 attack with the Pikachu, so still not very surprised. But a lot more... Actually, the statistics are almost exactly the same. That's really crazy. So I'm not going to touch it there. A lot of those decks also run Zapdos. So again, I don't really know what the delineation is. Pikachu Zebstrika. We've got a very favorable matchup against Charizard. More so than the other builds, which makes sense because they can't just retreat with the Moltres and just chill in the back. So that makes sense to me. And then Articuno Starmie is even better again because they just can't retreat. But... it's just like you're winning matchups you're already winning anyway. And then you're also worse into Mewtwo, which is a problem. So that's why I got off that build pretty quickly. Okay, so let's move on to Charizard. Winning matchup against Mewtwo, I can see it. Losing matchup against Pikachu, of course. The bird's weak to it. Pikachu comes out fast. Losing matchup to the Electrode variant. Loses very badly to the Zebstrika variant, as I just mentioned. Mirror match, 50%, obviously. Articuno and Starmie EX loses to it. Starmie comes out too fast. Makes sense to me. Pikachu Raichu loses that matchup. Makes sense to me. Ninetales, Rapidash. Okay, so it beats Blaine. They're beefy cards, right? It beats Arbok Weezing. There's no surprise there. It beats Marowak Sandslash. No surprise there. And, you know, has almost an 80% win rate against Venusaur. The 20% is obviously when they don't draw their Charizard or their Charmeleon. Or, you know, basically when they have bad luck, right? Which is another reason why I don't particularly like running Charizard too much. As you can see, the matchup spread just isn't that great. Okay, so Articuno Starmie beats Mewtwo. I agree. Loses to Pikachu in every single way. Loses very badly to the Zebstrika build. Beats Charizard Moltres. That hasn't been my experience when I play against Articuno Starmie decks. But, you know, again... coin flips from Misty, starting with Starmie quickly. They may not get set up, so, I mean, Starmie's just fast, right? Same reason Pikachu's good. It's crazy. 2 energy for 90 is just crazy. Mirror match, 50%, obviously. Pikachu Raichu, it loses. I can see that. Ninetales Rapidash, it just destroys, apparently. Favorable matchup against Arbok, Marowak, and Venusaur. So, I'm honestly completely fine with this matchup spread. You know, just getting these decks that take a little bit of time to set up with, you know, 2 energy for 90. So it's like, why would you play Starmie variants for 90 for 2 when you could play Pikachu and just also get a favorable type advantage against water, right? So Pikachu just really seems like the deck to play at the moment. Okay, now this is what I think the best deck in the game is currently, and I think these numbers are just going to increase over time. But if you'll notice, this is the only... I'm almost certain it's the only one on this list that has no losing matchups. Crazy. So 51% against Mewtwo Gardevoir, 64% against Pikachu Zapdos, 57% against Pikachu Electrode, 60% against Charizard Moltres, 53% against Pikachu Zebstrika, 58% against Articuno, 42% against... Not 42%. I'm going back to the wrong ones. 50% against Pikachu Raichu, obviously mirror match. 50% against Blaine. I really think that matchup comes down to who goes first a lot of the time. 70% against Arbok Weezing, no surprise there. 50% into Marowak Sandslash, 50% into Executor Venusaur. Yeah, so seems like the deck to beat. Blaine gets wrecked by Gardevoir, it makes sense to me. Gets wrecked by Pikachu in all variants. Gets wrecked by Starmie, obviously, because they also have type disadvantage. A neutral against Pikachu Raichu. Yeah, again, I think that's going first or not. 50% in the mirror match. 72% against Arbok Weezing. 56% against Marowak. And 71% against Executor Venusaur. Obviously, you got type advantage and coming out the gate quickly. So Blaine is obviously a good budget build, right? Okay, Arbok Weezing, the only winning matchup is against Mewtwo. So I think I'll just leave that there. Marowak Sandslash beats Pikachu and Zapdos EX. Pikachu and Zebstrika. Even with the Raichu build, so another case for Raichu. Crushes Arbok Weezing, tied with itself, obviously. And tied with Venusaur. So if you like just, you know, having... excuse me, not tied with Venusaur. Loses 31% to Venusaur. Tied with itself. 80% Arbok Weezing. Loses to Blaine. Yeah, so, I mean, if you want to go to the casino, you know, go for it. One of my favorite decks to play. I wish it was better, but sadly it's not. Executor Venusaur. So we lose to Mewtwo, I agree with. We lose to all Pikachu variants. We get crushed by... except for Raichu, apparently it's 50-50. I don't think that's true, by the way. Yeah, we get crushed by Charizard. Get crushed by Articuno Starmie. So what do we beat? We lose to Blaine. So we beat Arbok Weezing that every deck wins against, besides Mewtwo. And we win against Marowak. So, I mean, there's really no reason to run Venusaur, sadly. Okay, looks like Articuno EX. I'm assuming this is the 18 trainer version, since Articuno is by itself here. Wins against Mewtwo, Gardevoir. I don't see how that's happening. There must be some really good coin flips going on. Loses to all Pikachu variants. Has a winning matchup against Articuno Starmie? Oh, no, losing against that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Beats Charizard. That badly? I don't know, that seems weird to me. Because Charizard kind of wrecks this deck when I play it. But again, you never know how much of this is factoring in opponents getting lucky with Misty Head flips. So, you know, we'll see. Yep, loses to that Pikachu variant. Crushes Blaine, I could see that. Arbok Weezing is tied. That's interesting. Tied with, beats Marowak and beats Executor. I mean, it's at least a decent budget deck, but there's no real reason to just use this. Basically, robbing yourself of Starmie is just not a good idea, right? Then we've got Starmie Greninja. Beats Mewtwo Gardevoir. Okay. Beats Pikachu. Oh, no, excuse me. Loses to Pikachu. That makes sense. Loses to all Pikachu variants. Loses to the Raichu variant very badly, which is another case for Raichu. Beats Charizard. I can see it. Beats Blaine, obviously. Beats Arbok Weezing. Loses to Marowak in... Oh, no, excuse me. Yeah, loses to Marowak and ties with Executor Venusaur. Don't know how it's losing to Marowak. That's really interesting. Might be some variants at play there. Okay, what I consider to be the most fun deck in the game is Dragonite Weezing. Okay, so do we win any matchups? Arbok Weezing, and we tie with Marowak. So across the board, it's a fun deck, but apparently, you know, statistically, we just don't have any winning matchups. That's kind of sad. All right, we'll just move on from there then. Marowak Primeape. Beats Pikachu Zebstrika. Beats Pikachu Electrode. Beats Charizard Moltres. Ties with Articuno Starmie. Beats Pikachu Raichu very badly. Beats Arbok Weezing. Loses terribly to Marowak, Sandslash, and Executor. So, I mean, that spread's not terrible. Like, you want a budget deck, you pull a couple of Marowaks, and you got a couple of promos from the event, and you put some Primeapes in there, and maybe you've got something decent. Alakazam Weezing. Beats Mewtwo Gardevoir, that makes sense. You've got type advantage. Loses to everything else except Ninetales Rapidash that it ties with. Wigglytuff Weezing. Beats Mewtwo Gardevoir. Charizard Moltres. That seems sus. Beats Arbok Weezing. And Executor Venusaur. Okay. Muck Weezing beats Mewtwo Gardevoir. It makes perfect sense. Beats Articuno Starmie. Okay, that's one hard for me to swallow. And tied with Venusaur. Yeah, some of these are a little sus to me. I'm wondering like how many data points there actually are on some of these matchups. Let's see. Articuno Greninja beats Mewtwo. Beats Pikachu Zapdos. But loses to Zebstrika. Beats Charizard. Loses to Raichu. So it loses to all the Pikachu variants except for the Zapdos one. Sure, somehow. And then beats Marowak. And that's all the data points we have there. Lilligant Venusaur. Looks like it gets absolutely wrecked by everything except for Pikachu Raichu, where it has a 60%. So if you lose everything and your best matchups is 60-40, don't play that deck. Pest Control beats Mewtwo Gardevoir. Loses horribly to everything else. Arcanine Moltres beats Pikachu Zapdos, Pikachu Electrode, Charizard Moltres, Articuno Starmie, Pikachu Raichu, Ninetales Rapidash, and Arbok Weezing. Arcanine Moltres might actually be really good. As far as all the results are listed here, it's only losing one matchup. That's pretty crazy. Marowak Dugtrio. This is the casino deck. This is what I title the casino deck because everything's coin flippy. Getting wrecked by Arbok Weezing. Getting wrecked by Pikachu Raichu. 55-45 against Charizard Moltres. 50% into Pikachu Zebstrika. 56% win rate against Pikachu Electrode. Or Zapdos, excuse me. 50% into Pikachu Zebstrika. 35% to Mewtwo Gardevoir. So, I mean, really, you can cut, like... I'm not even sure. I mean, you can see, like, it just gets worse and worse as you drop down here. Even though this chart was by play rate, but obviously people are going to play the better decks, so that also kind of works. It's just not, you know, 1-for-1. Okay, so that's the matchup chart. Okay, now we're going to look at the tier list. So Pikachu Raichu, obviously if you have no losing matchups, you're going to be at the top. Next is Pikachu Zapdos. Next is Pikachu Zebstrika. Next is Pikachu Electrode. Might be a Pikachu problem. Not saying for sure. I did just mention that the Arcanine Moltres had really, really good matchup spread from what we could see. Articuno and Articuno Starmie, I mean, I really just think that any deck with Starmie is going to be way up here. There's just not that much information on it. The Starmie Greninja build has 50% plus win rate. Honestly, I think like Starmie Tentacruel or Starmie Golduck is just way better. I wish that was on this list. I think it'd be a lot higher. Mewtwo, apparently, you know, around 50%, but again, I think it could squeeze them, you know, a few more out of there. Blaine, Weezing, Marowak, Venusaur, C tier, it's like, why bother? And then D tier is just, you know, just don't touch it, right? So you're really looking at Pikachu variants, why not play Raichu? Then we're looking at water decks. I think Starmie is just a good idea. Crazy. The one with the most stats. You know, 130 HP, 2 energy, 90, free retreat. Who would have thought that would have been crazy? And then I think Mewtwo, I really believe it should be a little bit higher up, just barely, a couple little percentage points, here and there. Charizard's like the mid deck. You know, it's like you can win, but you can lose. You know, it's just, that's how I've always felt about the deck. So I mean, overall, this deck list is exactly, excuse me, this tier list is exactly what I would imagine. The matchup spread is almost exactly what I would imagine. I think Mewtwo is just, I mean, so tiny better. Everything else I basically 100% am on board with. I guess I will just showcase a few deck lists, you know, maybe so you guys can find out what to work towards. All right, so I'm just going to show 3 examples of top tier decks. You really shouldn't mess with anything that aren't these unless you just want to have some fun, but just know that your win rate is going to suffer. So first off, we have Mewtwo here. It's very straightforward. It's just 2 Ralts, 2 Kirlia, 2 Gardevoir, 2 Mewtwo, 2 Potion, 2 X-Speed, 2 Pokeball, 1 Red Card, 2 Research, 2 Geo, 1 Sabrina. So obviously you don't have to run the red card and you don't have to run more than 1 Ralts. The deck functions better for me when I run more than 1 Ralts, but you could make room for maybe a second Sabrina, you know, something like that. But you definitely need the 2 Giovannis. 2 Mewtwo hits kills Pikachu, which is really big. Giovanni plus Psy-Drive kills Dragonite, kills Executor. All that stuff adds up and is super important, but it's just a very straightforward list. And this is the list that I would take if I had to take Mewtwo. Now, obviously, we've got Articuno Starmie, which is also on that tier list. And so we just got 2 Staryu, 2 Starmie, 2 Articuno, 2 Potion, 2 XP, 2 Pokeball, 2 Research, 2 Misty, 2 Sabrina, 1 Red Card, 1 Giovanni. You know, again, you can mess with the trainer counts a bit, but the monsters obviously have to be the same. The 18 trainer version, you just take out the Staryus and the Starmies, and you probably run some fossils. You can double up on Red Card, you can double up on Giovanni. You know, you just have a bigger support package, but, you know, really, really similar decks, obviously. This, in my opinion, is the best deck in the game at the moment. Played it a lot on stream this morning. It does things that the regular Pikachu deck just cannot do, and that is shown in the matchup spread, as this is the only deck that didn't have any losing matchups, and the matchups where some of the Pikachu decks were losing, this one it was either even or even winning it. So you just have 2 Pikachus, 2 Pikachu EXs, 2 Raichus, 2 Zapdos EXs, 2 Potions. You have 2 X-Speeds. You need the X-Speeds. You got to have that tempo exchange, especially whenever you're trying to build up a Raichu for Lieutenant Surge, so that way you don't have to spend an energy to retreat when that energy can then be utilized on the Raichu. You got 2 Potions, 2 XP, 2 Pokeball, 2 Research, 2 Sabrina, and the 1 Surge, 1 Giovanni split is doing very well. If you want to see this deck in action, just check out the stream. I guess if you watch this on a later date, it is the morning stream from November 14th. Very, very good gameplay. But the fact that Raichu can one-shot Marowak is huge. The fact that Raichu with Giovanni one-shots Mewtwo is huge. Violating, you know, the tempo of the game by just making an attacker out of nowhere is also huge. You know, it's just it's a very, very, very potent strategy. I think it's much better than the Electrode and the Zebstrika variants, although those are also good, as you can see by the tier list and the matchup spread. I don't really think there's a reason to go into much else. I mean, this deck, you know, it beats Mewtwo, loses to everything else. This Dragonite deck wasn't beating anything reliably, you know, more than 50%. So you really just want to focus on the Mewtwo. All those Pikachu variants are good. Raichu version's the best, I think. And then you've got Articuno, you know, variants, but personally, I think what makes most of those decks good is the Starmie, not the Articuno. And this is actually my go-to Tentacruel Starmie deck that I think is just a little bit better than, you know, 18 trainer Articuno. I think it's even better than Starmie Articuno, but you know, it's just, there's not enough of it to get really a sample size. So hopefully you enjoyed the meta report. You know, kind of fumbling my way through that. If you want more content like this instead of so many battles all the time, please let me know. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon.